Hey, welcome back to Narc Talk, a production of ANOA. My name's Phil Hawk. With me is Matt Shea. Glad to have you guys back. Hey, the question today, Matt, we got is, what has the recent cartel activity in Mexico done up here in Arizona? How does that affect us up here in Arizona?
Yeah, well, as you know, Phil, we're a source state,
Correct.
Right? We're right next to the Mexican border, and so we are the first place that narcotics lands once it comes across the border, and those narcotics that are being run by one or more of those international drug trafficking organizations, the cartels. So whenever there's activity that's going on with the cartels that might disrupt their normal operations, that's going to affect us here. But you know about source state activity, Phil. Maybe explain to us what a source state is.
Well, basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, we're like you just said, we're the first destination for the drugs that come from Mexico, from the cartels. And usually come across the border in a variety of ways. We've had backpackers, through commercial vehicles, through body cavities, body carrying, all kinds of ways. They usually get here across the port, across the border, and then they land someplace either in Tucson or Phoenix, and they're taken off, repackaged again, and set up for their next destination, which could be Colorado, St. Louis,
yeah, you
Chicago,
name any of those major cities. Sure.
And it gets redistributed and repackaged, and sometimes you even see them labeled. They'll label the packages for different people, and they'll send it out that way, whatever. And so Arizona is considered a source state. That's where the drugs for Chicago are coming from, is from Arizona. That's where the drugs for New York are coming from, is Arizona. And so my understanding was those other states like Illinois, Missouri, Michigan are called demand states, because that's where they want the product. That's where they want the cocaine, the fentanyl, the heroin, whatever it is, meth. Does that make sense? Am I in the right play?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So if you think of it a lot like how an airline operates, where airlines have hubs and then they'll have commuters that will stretch out to those small suburbs, it operates pretty similarly. So we share the distinction to being a source state with a couple other states, obviously. Currently, most of the narcotics that come into the United States come up through the Mexican border. They come in through a variety of other ways also, but the vast majority is coming up through the Mexican border, especially when we start talking about fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, all of those types of drugs coming up. And so the states that share that border are generally all going to be source states, but some of them have a little bit better freeway and highway system in which can be utilized by those organizations to be able to move it once in the source state, not only up to the source city, so Metro Phoenix would be considered to be a source city. And it's brought up there because, we just simply have the area, we have the extra housing, we have all of the different items that are available to the cartels for them to be able to use to bring the drugs up, to find a way to smuggle it into the United States. Once getting in the United States, they have to find a secure location. We call them stash houses, which they would land at. And at that point, then it starts to operate like any other major business, right? They will start to, first, they'll verify that all the drugs they sent up are up, right? That none got taken off or are missing in between. They haven't been cut open, they haven't whatever else. So they'll check their inventory. They'll divide their inventory and perhaps put them in separate stash houses, different ones handled by different groups. And then they will start to take the orders in which they can send them out to those destination cities, the demand cities. And our major ones out of Metro Phoenix are going to be Kansas City and Chicago, Detroit, New York. Occasionally we'll send it up on the West Coast, but a lot of times California will handle, Oregon and Washington State and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, that kind of a thing. Texas generally will handle the states that are basically along the Gulf and starting to stretch up a bit of the East Coast.
Yeah.
And we kind of feed all of the central United States, and all the way up to the Northeast, we'll get drugs that are shipped from Arizona that'll end up in Maine. But it's if you think about it, it's quite an undertaking. The cartels will actually operate like any other major company. So while we have the primary group, the primary members of the cartel will operate in Mexico. they will operate what they call plazas close to and plazas over the border. And a plaza is basically it's going to be an area of operation in which they will move. Could be drugs, could be people, could be, whatever it is, they're going to move up in the United States and then get it to their source city, right? In that source city, they will have another plaza where members of the cartel actually operate, and they'll handle those drug houses, etc. They will also have parts of those cartels operating out of those other cities. They might subcontract, if you will, out to United States citizens, up to other drug trafficking organizations that are here based in the United States and have them do the work for them and just simply sell it. But a lot of times we'll see that, say, the Sinaloa cartel, Zetas, whoever else, will have the drugs brought to a Zeta group that's within Metro Phoenix, to a Zeta group that's in, say, Las Vegas, then to a Zeta group that's in New York. And from there, they will arrange for them to go out to the smaller cities and towns and suburbs from there. So very much like an airline operates, or
that's a great analogy.
Like someone that was sending packages out, like like UPS kind of operates.
Right. No, that's great.
Yeah.
Hey, and the thing I was going to say a little bit, maybe talk about the fact that the cartels aren't just dealing in drugs. What else are they dealing in?
Yeah, you're right. So two topics there. For one, we're not only a source city for drugs and other items going up northbound, we are actually Metro Phoenix. We're a source state for both firearms and cash going back down to the cartels. We send a significant amount of mostly AK-47 style rifles south across the border, and unfortunately arm some of those cartel groups there. That is probably a whole nother topic on its own.
Oh, it is.
But that's we send stuff south as much as we send stuff north, unfortunately. Now, as far as the cartels themselves, a lot of people kind of get tied up in the fact that it's a drug war and the cartels are just involved in drugs. Now, drugs are certainly probably their most prevalent item that they will produce and distribute and whatever else. But man, they're involved in everything. So they're involved in, human smuggling. They're involved in fuel theft. They're involved in human trafficking, kidnapping, money laundering. All of these things earn money for the cartel. They do it mostly within the borders of Mexico. But there was quite a bit of time, actually, I think when you were still over with Phoenix PD, where we had a big issue going on with kidnapping going on here in Phoenix.
Home invasions.
And that was all related to that kind of thing. So the DTOs, the cartels, they really have their fingers in a lot of different things.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand that. They think it's just the cartels are with drugs and that's it. But just the drugs itself, if you have drugs, you're still tying into money laundering and weapons, because the weapons are big down in Mexico to get across. Whatever.
That alone will tie into each other. But there's stuff that's not even related to drugs, like fuel theft in Mexico is huge, and the cartels make a ton of money. They extort people out there. They'll take over whole towns, or at least they will extort the store owners and property owners of entire towns down in Mexico. And if they don't pay them the money they owed, or facilitate that help them with what they're trying to do in that town, they'll hurt, harm, execute, burn down their business. That all goes on down there.
Yeah.
So it's a constantly changing thing. And then now we have a lot else that's going on with the cartels when it comes to Mexico itself kind of fighting back against the cartels. That had kind of taken a back seat for a little while. 2006. I think is when the first time they really started fighting against the cartels, and that's when it splintered from 3 major cartel groups into about, it was 8. Yeah. And now we're starting to see those 8 groups are now like 24 primary cartel groups under 3 major names, and then another 125 drug trafficking organizations that are either in support of or they're fighting against each other down there.
Yeah. No, I think people don't understand that. Back when I started, there were like 3 major cartels, and it seemed like every time someone took a hit, it splintered it up. And I'm sure it's because it's a very profitable business if you're down there and you're in control of it. And like I said, you can run with money laundering, weapons, fuel thefts, even political corruption, whatever else. So it's a big what do you call it, a vacuum, where you take somebody out, then someone else is going to step in and to jump into that profit mode that they know they can make some money on, whatever. So
yeah, the downside, everything has a right. Every coin has two sides to it. So the downside when you start to take action against those cartels is the other opposition groups, or even if they were once part of that cartel, they see the opportunity to take control, and that is big down in Mexico, right? To be the one that's in control. Not only is it money, but it's prestige, it's power, it's influence, and a lot of different things. So when we take out a major member of the organization, there becomes a vacuum, like you said, and people try and jump in and fill that. And that's why we saw a lot of those cartels splinter and why we still see that going. But ultimately, it's the necessary means to the end if you want to actually lessen or reduce the amount of overall violence and overall narcotics coming in the United States. You need to start to work against those cartels, to do those types of operations, to try and get them a little bit in control. It's not just a Mexico problem. It's definitely a U.S. problem because when they have those issues in Mexico, when there's those splintering groups that start infighting, that spreads out into the United States also.
Yes. Yeah. True. We've seen that before, for sure.
So in this most recent instance where they took out the head of the CA...
El Mencho?
They took out El Mencho. Basically, we're starting to see now a little bit of that reverberating throughout the U.S. So anytime the cartels are having issues when they're fighting against each other, and historically, here in Arizona, the Sinaloa cartel has operated most of the area that is south of us on the border, and therefore, most of the drugs that came up, most of the human smuggling that was occurring, all the rest of that, all the guns that were going south and the money, all go into the Sinaloa cartel. But the cartels on both sides have been fighting with them and taking up bits of their, they've been taking, a little turf war, give and give back. And so what we started seeing here is we saw a large fluctuation in the types of drugs we were getting in, or the quality. Either we would start to see, we'll take fentanyl, for instance. For a long period of time, fentanyl was fairly stable as far as the quality and quantity that was coming up. They would increase the amount, certainly, that would coming in, but the quality was pretty much the same. Recently, we've seen a huge fluctuation in the quantity here in Arizona, and of course that reverberates throughout the nation as it moves forth. So we started seeing some fentanyl that was very weak and other fentanyl that was very strong. We saw analogs of fentanyl, so different forms of fentanyl, such as carfentanil, starting to be seized here in Arizona, in Chandler just last month. So it's March right now, end of March. And just last month in Chandler, they seized 100,000 fentanyl pills that were carfentanil. Carfentanil, in case any of the viewers don't know, carfentanil is 100 times more potent than your standard fentanyl, and it is 10,000 times more potent than, say,
morphine.
Morphine, exactly. So a super strong product. So they only need small amounts, but it's very difficult. Think of a chocolate chip cookie. It's very difficult to get that small amount of chocolate chip into your cookie without putting too much. So we started seeing a spike in overdoses having to do with carfentanil, or in the case where they have fentanyl that is weaker, that is not as potent, you start to get some of your customer base, some of the people that have substance abuse problems, some of the users of that, they'll either take more. So rather than take, hypothetically one pill, either consuming it or smoking it, which is kind of the more common way to do it now, but instead of taking one, they'll take two, and that potentially overdoses them. Or maybe they took one that was normal fentanyl and one that was carfentanil, and that caused them to overdose. Or because the pill form they have is so weak, or it's manufactured in a method or in a way that they don't enjoy anymore, they switch to, say, powdered fentanyl. And then that's a whole other thing that they've got to get through, and another spike in overdoses, etc. All of this has to do with the cartels fighting because... So now we used to have, when the cartels are not infighting like that, they're very dangerous. They're sending a ton of dope up here. It's not a great thing, but becomes a little unstable when they have that vacuum power. When it's unstable, you used to have, let's say, 3 or 4 cooks all cooking the same product in the same manner, and it was handled securely throughout the cartel. Now it's splintered, so now this cook's cooking with this recipe, and this one with this recipe, and this one with this recipe.
Yeah, it's kind of like a standardized formula. And then it gets all jacked up, and
it will
people make it up as they go.
Yeah, it will stabilize again once they find the product that their customer base desires. But they'll step outside of the norm and they'll try different things. We start to see, different forms of fentanyl, rock fentanyl, different types of powdered fentanyl, different analogs, and all sorts of stuff. And when that happens to us here in the state of Arizona, again, it moves downstream. The folks that are in Vegas, the people that are in New York, whatever else, will start to suffer from the same thing. And that's just one of the issues that happens when it unstabilizes like that. Again, if you think about that, the cartel has groups that they've stationed here in Metro Phoenix. Let's say I'm what they would call a plaza boss that operates out of Metro Phoenix. I've got 4 or 5 stash houses. I've got 20, 30 employees that work for me. We all work on behalf of Cartel A. Cartel A starts getting into a clash with Cartel B, and suddenly we're not getting our regular payment. We're not getting the regular loads of drugs coming in as we normally would, so we can send them out, and now our customers are starting to get a little anxious. In addition, we're not even sure if Cartel A is going to be the predominant cartel anymore, so we might be thinking to ourselves, maybe we should join up with Cartel B. All of these things start to happen and can change the way that plaza, that group of individuals that are working in, say, Metro Phoenix or in Tucson and Flagstaff are behaving. They may start to kind of take side jobs, if you will. They'll start to move some of their own drugs that weren't sanctioned by the cartel groups. They might do side deals with other organizations, and they won't operate in the same disciplined manner in which that cartel demands when they're under their control that they act. They'll step outside a little bit, and that can become a little more dangerous for them. More dangerous to the community. They might start cutting or adding adulterants to the drugs that they have. That can be more dangerous to their users. All of that can occur.
Gotcha. So you said they're adding adulterants, whatever. Isn't that a common thing? Because I see some of these overdose reports, and it's very rare that I see that the pill was just fentanyl. It seems like it's a mixture of different things. Is that kind of what they do? Is that what they call stepping on so that they get more of their product out there?
Really 2 different things.
Okay.
And I think the topic is actually probably good for a whole nother thing, but we'll just touch on it briefly. So
we come up with a lot of different topics as we're talking.
I know. That's all right. Always something to jabber about,
Yeah.
right? That's good. So when fentanyl first started coming over, it was almost, we won't say it's pure fentanyl. You only need about 2 milligrams of that product inside a pill. A M30 pill, which everyone can recognize fentanyl is probably, small pill, 30 milligrams of product that's inside that pill. But what's in there actually is 2 milligrams of that is fentanyl. The rest of it is just binder material and inert stuff that you would consume. And the fentanyl is what affects you. But as they started moving forward, they started different recipes. They're trying to figure out what people would like. They would change colors. They maybe change the type of pill or whatever else. But they would add either different cutting agents because they ran out of mannitol, for instance, and they wanted to use some other baby formula or some other powder they wanted to mix in there to help it bind together. Or they would start to add other narcotics because they want their users to have a slightly different effect. And again, the goal is Phil sells fentanyl pills and Matt sells fentanyl pills. If I want people to consume my fentanyl pills, I want my pills to be better than yours. Therefore, I'm going to mix something into it. So we would see xylazine mixed into a lot of it. Occasionally, we'd even see heroin put into it. We're seeing pills with all sorts of different stuff, different synthetic cathinones or stimulants, methamphetamine on occasion, MDMA we've seen, which is ecstasy mixed in. And it's just they're throwing, again, a bunch of stuff at the wall and seeing what will stick, seeing what their customers will like, and what becomes a product that they can offer that they can make profit on. So all of that kind of is what cutting agents and adulterants are. An adulterant is basically when you have one narcotic product and you add maybe an addition of another narcotic, and it will cause an additional effect within the user that they might enjoy, or it might extend the amount of time they spend under the influence of that drug, all sorts of different reasons for it. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
True. Good info.
So in addition to all of that, Phil, the other issues that can occur kind of downstream. So again, we're talking about once it starts to leave Arizona and starts using our freeways and highways to get from our source city to those destination cities or those demand cities, we can see a variety of other things happen there. We can see that the prices will fluctuate quite a bit, right? It's all supply and demand, right? If there isn't enough supply and the demand is still there, then the prices will raise. Or if the product becomes unstable, then the prices might lower, or you might have 2 different factions which are kind of fighting over the prices. That can occur. lower prices with drugs is never a good thing. It's always going to cause there to be more consumers. More consumers means more people that are potentially going to develop a substance abuse problem. And as you know, as everybody knows that either knows someone that had a substance abuse problem or has participated with an organization that kind of attacks that, is that a substance abuse problem, somebody that consumes drugs and ends up being kind of consumed by them themselves, it's not just that one person's problem. It very quickly becomes a problem for their immediate family, then their extended family, and soon it will be their neighborhood and community that will be affected by that. And so
many people impacted by that.
Yeah, when we see these drugs fluctuating like this, prices going up and down, perhaps the increased violence because of the groups that are now fighting not only in Mexico in between, but they'll fight here in town between themselves and not really having a lot of direction. All of that affects our communities, our officers, our investigators, and it just becomes a whole problem for not only the state, but again, those states that are, as I say, downstream.
Can you talk about the difference in value of drugs when they're here in Arizona as compared to when they're in Chicago?
Well, that's kind of an easy one. Anybody that is involved in any product that's going to have to be transported, those, again, I like to use the word logistics, but that's exactly what it is. That all costs money. So drugs come in here in the state of Arizona, and let's just assume that it goes immediately from the International Drug Trafficking Organization, the cartels, to a domestic-based organization here. Let's say they hand it off almost immediately to someone that operates domestically here in the United States. Could be a local gang, could be just a regular DTO, whatever else. So they pay their price, but they want to move it up to Chicago. Well, they've got to pay for somebody that's going to be willing to do it, probably multiple cars. A lot of times they'll have a chase car or somebody to distract law enforcement, something along those lines. Scouts, they've got to pay for someone to have the stash house upstream. They've got to pay for someone to operate that stash house for them, at that point, for them to provide security and whatever else. All that costs money. So typically what we see is...
The cost of transportation.
Yeah, all of that's there. We'll typically see drug values double by the time it gets up to one of the major cities. And then, it's not unusual to see them triple as it makes it out to the suburbs and stuff like that. So if you're, like, say, living in, upstate New York, you're going to be paying 3 times the price for what the narcotic would be down here, which... unfortunately becomes its own problem because then you'll get enterprising people that live in upstate New York that think, I'll just rent a car and come down to Arizona and come grab it myself.
Happens all the time, right?
And then, it just escalates from there. But again, that is probably yet another topic.
Another topic. Well, that'll do it for this episode, but thanks for hanging in with us and viewing with us. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Any comments, hit us up at podcast@aznoa.org. And again, appreciate you guys being part of this. And we'll see you soon. Stay safe and stay strong.